Hello and welcome to this afternoon's webinar on 5G and manufacturing. My name is Eleanor Brash. I am Head of Marketing at Cambridge Wireless, which is the lead partner in the UK 5G Innovation Network, a consortium of members who is set to knowledge sharing and the networking in the 5G industry. Joining me today are Louise Lancaster, the Regulatory and Policy Lead at DCMS, and Emma Martin-Vignette, Head of Political Affairs and Government Relations at Bosch UK. And we also have online Wenbing Yao, VP of Business Development and Partnerships at Huawei. 5G is coming. The government aims to deploy 5G across the country by 2027 and is already investing over £200 million on various testbeds and trials. But what does this mean for manufacturing? How could 5G translate to increased business value, raised productivity, improved efficiency, or new services? These are the questions that we hope to answer today. The format of the webinar will be as follows. Each of my panellists will introduce themselves with a short segment, after which they will take questions from the audience. Please feel free to write in whenever a question comes to your mind. Just write them in the chat. We have Wenbing joining us from China, and she will also be on the chat answering questions in text, whereas Emma and Louise are with me here in the room today. And now I will pass over to Wenbing for the first introduction.
Good afternoon, I'm Wenbing Yao from Huawei UK, and thank you very much for inviting me to participating in today's webcast. I'm really glad to have the opportunity to share Huawei's view on the challenges manufacturing sector is facing and how 5G can possibly help to tackle these challenges. In the past 6 years, I've helped to grow 5G from a concept into a reality. And currently, I'm leading Huawei's participation in the Worcestershire 5G Testbed project funded by the DCMS. This project aims to provide quantified assessment of how 5G can possibly help the Industry 4.0 to become reality, and how we can increase productivity with the help of 5G. In this project, we are going to focus on preventative maintenance, the use of robotics, and also assisted manufacturing with AR or advanced video technologies. And we'd like to help our partner such as Bosch UK and Mazak to explore the potential of 5G in these areas. We're seeing a huge wave of digital transformation in the manufacturing sector, particularly in the factory digital transformation. We discovered that the bottleneck for the transformation lies in the fact that things are isolated at the factory floor level. The robotics, the machines, and the data sensors, they're all connected via their own networks, which are unconnected. And also, it is very difficult to collect the data from the floor level. This is because most of the things and the machines are connected via cable. If we can replace the cable with wireless, we can dramatically reduce the cost. At the material level, probably 30 to 40%. Installation cost reduced 80 to 90%, and also reduce the engineering and administration cost up to 50 or 70%. This is a huge gain that wireless can bring to the digital factory transformation. In addition to that, the wireless connectivity can help to enable predictive maintenance, the digital asset management. It can also enable new business models such as equipment as a service or even factory as a service. And some of these aspects are going to be tested in the Worcestershire Test Network project that we're doing together with Bosch and Mazak. Unlike today's wireless technologies, 5G can offer millisecond levels of the latency and also a massive number of connections and ultra-reliable connectivity. This is extremely important for the industrial manufacturing area. And in fact, 5G is designed for addressing the requirements from the manufacturing areas and the many other vertical applications. I'm sure you're going to hear a lot about what 5G can offer and what its standards status is in today's webcast. And I'm going to give the floor back to the webcaster presenter, but I will be available to answer questions via online chat.
Thank you, Wenbing. And now I will hand over to Louise to give the government's angle on 5G in manufacturing.
Thank you. Hello, good afternoon. My name is Louise Lancaster. I work on the government's 5G Testbeds and Trials programme, which is run by the Department of Digital, Culture, Media and Sport. And this afternoon, I'd just like to give you a quick introduction to the programme and to explain a bit about why we think there might be benefits from some sector-specific trials and testbeds. So first of all, what is 5G? The important thing to note is that it's more than just another G. We're used to mobile networks very much focusing on consumer mobile services, but 5G has the potential to offer many, many more applications for the enterprise space and for businesses, and has the potential to really boost productivity in the UK as a result. So this triangle shows the different aspects of 5G networks. So at the top of the triangle, you can see that we have the enhanced mobile broadband use case, which is the one that we're all most familiar with, which will really enable increased use of video streaming, but also applications such as augmented reality and virtual reality. AR and VR also have an important role to play in the enterprise space. They can provide training tools, for example, to staff. At the bottom left-hand corner of the triangle, you can see that 5G enables massive machine-type communications. So this is really an evolution of IoT. It will enable many, many more machines, millions and billions of devices to be connected and sensors and so on. And at the bottom right-hand corner, we have ultra-reliable and low-latency communications. So low latency really means that communications can be made in almost real time, which is very important for things like video monitoring of equipment and where instantaneous communications are required. 5G can enable much more reliable networks. New technologies such as network slicing can enable quality of service to be provided rather than a best effort service. So the Testbeds and Trials programme really aims to accelerate investment in 5G networks. We believe that 5G network technologies will be deployed by operators in the fullness of time, but we really want the UK to become a leading user of 5G, so we want to bring forward that investment by stimulating demand and identifying use cases. There's a lot of uncertainty around the applications beyond those consumer mobile applications, and so we really want to demonstrate that there is demand for and uses for this technology within the enterprise space. So we want to trial new business models, encourage new service providers, self-deployed networks, really bringing networks into the hands of users who need them. The first element of our Testbeds and Trials programme was to fund test networks within 3 UK universities. And each of these universities has slightly different aspects that it focuses on. So King's College London, for example, focuses on the so-called tactile internet, haptic technology, which enables applications such as remote surgery. The University of Bristol is looking at deployments in a real live urban setting and applications such as tourism and how AR and VR can enhance citizen experiences. And the University of Surrey is really the leading research centre for 5G in the UK, working very closely with operators and vendors. We then launched a phase 1 competition for some initial, early, relatively small scale projects throughout the UK. And this map shows the distribution of those projects and the wide range of applications that they are looking at. So we have some rural projects looking at things like agri-tech, smart farming through drones, the use of IP networks for radio broadcasting. We have a tourism project in Bristol and Bath around the Roman baths. And we have an industrial project in Worcestershire, which Eman will talk about. So we've got a good range of projects. We recently offered a competition for a large-scale urban 5G project, which is looking at both deployment challenges but also the way in which cities can use the networks and use the data generated from those networks to enhance their communities. And we are due to announce the location of that project will take place in towards the end of this summer. In addition to those, we have work streams looking at projects on road and rail and security. So we also think that there might be considerable benefits in looking at investing in specific sectors. So Accenture has predicted that by 2030, the industrial Internet of Things could be worth around £4 billion to the UK economy. And we think that both investment and demand can be stimulated potentially through demonstrating use cases and developing 5G technology in key locations that are relevant to those sectors. And the manufacturing sector is one of those that we've identified as potentially worth looking at. So if we are to do this, it would likely take the form of a competition in which we would seek bids from consortia with a strong industry component, and we would be likely to invite proposals for testbed facilities that would run over a multi-year period. So how can the manufacturing sector benefit from 5G? Well, as we've heard, 5G networks have potential to boost productivity and increase efficiency in the era of the fourth industrial revolution and industrial IoT. They can support, due to the fact that they're highly reliable, they can support critical infrastructure. They can enable automated remote inspections with real live HD video and other bandwidth intensive sensing, monitoring and inspection content. Real-time monitoring can enable predictive maintenance of machines, which reduces or prevents downtime, which of course has costs associated with it, can prevent accidents, and can ensure compliance with regulations such as environmental regulations. Machines and sensors obviously generate a lot of data, and so these networks can enable performance optimization through data analytics, big data analytics. And indeed, edge computing is very much part of 5G networking. And so that provides new options for the storage and processing of huge volumes of data on a localized basis rather than having to be up in the cloud. So we're very keen to hear from the sector in terms of what are your challenges and what could you do if you had this sort of dedicated connectivity. What might future projects look like? Are we talking about indoor environments, outdoor environments? Is there a cluster of businesses that would be an appropriate location? Would it be an open or a closed test bed? We're thinking it might be useful to have somewhere that is more of a sandbox approach where multiple organizations can come and use the network to carry out trials. So we're very much open to your ideas, and we hope that this conversation will stimulate some of those ideas. Thank you.
Thank you, Louise. It's great to see that the government is doing so much to encourage the deployment of 5G in the UK. And as Louise says, we would love to hear your thoughts, your comments, and if you've got any questions at all, please write them down in the text box on the side. Meanwhile, we'll pass on to Emma and Bosch, who are doing great work in the development of 5G, and it will be really interesting to hear what you're doing.
Thank you very much. So we'll switch. So my name is Iman Matavanat. I work Bosch more than 18 years. I have an engineering background, and I'm responsible for political affairs and government relation. And I have another hat, also responsible for smart cities in the UK. I'll take you in my slides in a journey, and I will start in my journey actually to show you some of the potential sectors for 5G. 5G is obviously an enabler, but what's important is that the IT industry is in permanent revolution, with the new technologies and methods repeatedly transforming the way we learn, communicate, and do business. Few changes, however, are likely to be as revolutionary as the advent of 5G. This new stage in wireless communication will go far beyond increasing the speed of smartphones research, if you like, and searches. It will unleash new possibilities in transportation, medicine, and as well as manufacturing, and countless other areas of our life. So the most fundamental advantage of 5G is the speed. With a clear connection, the technology should be able to download at a rate of 30 gigabytes per second. This is roughly 1,000 times faster than what is available at the moment with a 4G connection. Just to give you a comparison with the powerful background of 5G. But I would like to touch on two areas as an application areas in this field. 5G technology will help push forward another greater technology ground, the driverless car. We know that the automotive manufacturers have made great decisive steps in the development of GIS, or Geographic Information System, mapping, and other resources necessary for directing driverless vehicles. But they are limited by wireless communication issues. In particular, and Louise touched on that, latency problems with 4G, technology undermine the safety of automated cars. So I'll give you an example. When these cars encounter a road obstacle, they have to communicate with a data center, which instruct them how they should respond and also interact with other cars. So there is a health and safety element here, which can be improved if we have real-time communication. Another area, and I would like to touch on it, which is really important, is quick, decisive action, also crucial in hospital, healthcare, where doctors are increasingly introducing robotic equipment to perform surgeries and other essential functions. These robots are designed to respond to doctors' remote instruction, allowing them to perform medical procedures in a wider range of conditions. Because of latency issues again, however, these machines often take a few seconds to respond, making it difficult to doctors actually to deal with sudden complications and emergencies. So the latency is very, very important, and having a low latency is very important, which 5G actually in that case offer. Going back to my topic, factory of the future. In an volatile, intense of changes due to shorter businesses, product life cycles, manufacturing companies around the globe are under extreme pressure. Margins are squeezed or are being squeezed more than ever as components increasingly becoming varied and complex to produce. So competitiveness is really everything to manufacturers, and much needed gains in efficiency and profitability will have to be achieved through new processes and innovation. This includes, for example, the continued automation of robots and warehouse transportation and cutting cables to become truly flexible. So therefore, 5G network offer manufacturers and telecom operators the chances to build smart factories and truly take advantage of technologies such as automation, artificial intelligence, and augmented reality for troubleshooting and Internet of Things. So there will be a new way of interaction between human workers and machines. But I would like to mention another area, which it goes really hand in hand with manufacturing, logistic. If we talk about manufacturing, we talk about either just-in-time delivery, we talk about sometimes case-by-case delivery. However, there is something important to consider. For example, a parcel of container usually changes hands during transportation and storage at least 30 times. So think, if the transport object was damaged between, let's say, A and B, where did the damage actually happen? And who is responsible for the damage? You will not be able to know or track. You may be able to track for a certain moment, but not to the end of it. So by installing 5G connected sensors to every item, either on the inside or outside of the package, the stakeholder in the supply chain can, at any given time, as the item's location, temperature, humidity, etc., and much more, they can record everything. They can know exactly in real time where the product is. And that could save a lot of money in the processes, but as well as in the way how they can deal with their suppliers, as well as with their customers in a future term. Last but not least, and I knew I ran out of time, but Nebosh project, and I wouldn't actually want to say Nebosh project, we are one of the partners in this project, and we are very thankful to the government for financing this testbed. We are working together with other partners such as BT, O2, Surrey University, and that is led through the Worcestershire LEP. We're very fortunate to trial the processes, but as well as optimize our robotic engagement. And actually, at this moment, we are seeing only through having the 5G usability in that perspective, 1 to 2% reduction in our efficiency time. So that is really, really a very promising indeed. Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to the questions.
Thank you, Aman. It's fantastic to see Bosch's vision for the future of the factory and for logistics. Really, really interesting to hear. Now, questions have started coming in from online, and the first one I think I'm going to address to you, Aman, for discussion. It's 5G can address a few different areas, but the value chain and the processes for producing commodity goods compared to high-value goods are very different. Are these differences being considered in the potential use cases for 5G and how it's being deployed?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Not only we consider that, but please do think that the perspective of the processes or in considering or not considering these things is not important. The important thing is that you will have new business models encouraged through the 5G. So for example, I will tell you one example for that, which we'll see now. Now you need to own an asset. So if you have a factory, you are bounded to have a capital. But imagine in the future, you actually don't need to own the asset. You will be able to pay per use. So that means it's unleashing a new business model, but as well as unleashing new business ideas. And therefore, back to your question, it will not matter anymore because you will have different usability and different business model moving forward.
And that sounds like it would enable a whole raft of different people to be able to enter the supply chain.
Exactly, absolutely. I mean, I have to say, at the moment, you probably say Bosch is a corporate company and we have O2 and BT, others in our testbed. Please don't be disencouraged. We think that the startups will be even more in this environment because we need disruptive technologies. And we think thinking outside of the box and thinking with the new ideas that can only come from startups. And we're looking always for startups, and we're looking always with engagement for startups. So if you are one, please speak out.
Perfect. And this sounds like it might chime quite well with some of the new project ideas that you were talking about earlier, Louise.
Yes, I was thinking, the government published recently a document called the Future Telecoms Infrastructure Review, looking at the future structure of the mobile market. And one of the concepts that we noted was this idea of market expansion. So enabling new service providers to come into the market, thinking of new ways in which spectrum can be made available for new service providers. So really introducing an element of disruption and indeed niche service provision. So in the same way that we see in the fixed line market, enabling service providers who are specialists in the enterprise space, and indeed enabling self-provision of networks. So we're very interested in this disruptive element.
Perfect. Let's move to another question online. So we're asking people to play with 5G and start to adopt this technology. How can they go about doing that? If I was a manufacturer looking to bring 5G into my workplace, what steps would I take and who should I be engaging with?
So I think through the program is one of those options, because we would bring together the users from the sector with the equipment manufacturers and the service providers and so on. So they would probably form part of a consortium. And indeed, DCMS organises events that can indeed bring those stakeholders, those different stakeholders together and introduce them. And we did a little bit of that in our phase 1 competition.
Okay, another question from online. Manufacturing is predominantly indoors, but mobile operators tend to focus on 5G outdoors. How is the sector planning to bring 5G indoors?
Well, indoor coverage, private LTE networks, self-deployed networks were key features in the government's Future Telecoms Infrastructure Review. And you're absolutely right, there has been a sort of outside-in approach. Before, I mean, having said that, there are some operators who focus more on the enterprise space who have deployed bespoke private LTE networks, but we want to see a lot more of that sort of thing. And it's that kind of new model and those indoor networks that we're trying to encourage through the program.
Okay.
I only agree, absolutely. I mean, we're looking, also in what's the Bosch project is indoor applications. So I agree with you. At the moment, or in the past, we were focusing more on the outdoor, but it's definitely indoors also is one of the elements coming. And I will encourage you as well to look into the UK 5G website, because we do have a chat room and we do talk about it, but as well as encourage you to engage with the companies who are active in this platform. And I agree with Louise, at the moment, the testbed is definitely a good environment to actually try, but also get understanding of how you can make this applications indoors.
And in terms of technologically how we could move 5G indoors compared to outdoors, I'm sure Wen Bing on the line will be able to answer that question as well. So let's move on to the next one. So how is the government planning on tackling the challenges associated with the rollout of 5G?
So we have a raft of measures. We published initially our 5G strategy, I think it was March 2017, and we provided an update to that strategy earlier this year. So one of the things that we're looking at, for example, is reducing barriers to deployment, trying to reduce the cost of deployment. We're very conscious, for example, that 5G networks will require more cell sites, so-called small cells, and therefore the processes by which operators install those cells needs to become a lot less clunky and a lot more streamlined, and and the cost level needs to reduce. So we're very much looking at streamlining those processes. We have a group called the Local Connectivity Group, which brings industry and local authorities together to look at ways of working, ways in which local authorities make their assets available for operators and so on. So I would, yes, refer you to our strategy documents for more details on that.
Thank you. Moving to a manufacturer-specific question. The culture in manufacturing industries, it can be quite slow to adopt new technologies, or allegedly so. How can the telecoms industry make it easy for manufacturers to adopt 5G? And when somebody makes a decision to adopt it, how long do you think it would take for them to deploy?
Okay, so I'm not obviously a telecom manufacturer, but I think there are three things to consider. First of all, I think the telecom operators are looking in adopting, as Louise also said, different use cases and service models, if you like. So they're trying to be more, I would say, flexible rather than what we have at the moment with 4G, because I hear you and I hear why you are asking this question. In the past, we had a little bit difficulties to have flexibility of implementations of, for example, 4G in some areas, and especially most of the manufacturing sites are outside of the connected zones, which makes it more complicated for the manufacturer to be actually connected. So we hear very positive signals, I have to say, from BT and O2 and others, that they will make it more easy. And actually, they would like to be a part of, if you like, the whole value chain. So at the moment, if you like, they are just there and you pay the monthly fee or whatever, but they now at the moment also want to invest in the technology moving forward. So that will make them even a stakeholder. Secondly is, if you, I wouldn't say factories or manufacturers are traditional and slow. I would think is the assumption probably of the investment that it doesn't make you agile. You are investing in machinery more than, some machinery more than 2 million. So you have definitely depreciation time of more than 20 years. So therefore, you bond it with the capital. But what we are saying here, and I mentioned that before, is having 5G element into it and having actually different business model allowing you to have different factories or manufacturing line, if you like, because you can just pay per use for the machinery. So therefore, you could be more speeding up the implementation and adoption of the technology faster than you are now, because you're not bounded to have a capital upfront to invest in the machinery. So I really see lots of development, I have to say. Agriculture is one of them, because agriculture, they're bounded of course of the assets, but as well as investment. But we see at the moment, because of the sensor technologies, it's so cheap. And I mean it's so cheap because one sensor will cost you at the moment maybe around 10 to 20p. So imagine if you have a strawberry field and you need to have people to come in and actually to collect these strawberries. You don't need that anymore, because you could actually implement sensors around all your fields, and that will not cost you a lot, but will allow you actually for the next step to have robotic engaging with the sensors to know exactly where they're walking and collecting your strawberry. And you don't have even to buy the robotic. You can just hire them per use. So what I'm trying to say is the new technology and 5G and the whole new business models will enable you more for adoption rather than now moving forward.
So the potential of it is definitely worth the adoption of it.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Interesting. So there's an ever-present question around 5G about security, and it's particularly valid in the manufacturing case where you need to make sure that your operations are secure. What's taking place to ensure security in 5G for manufacturing? What are the features that need to be considered, and what are the steps that are being taken to make sure that it is accomplished?
Okay, so one of the elements of 5G is not only low latency, but actually is very, very, very secure. When we talk about, for example, securing the data analysis, which is you will need it when you have connected manufacturing lines, that means that you will need higher, if you like, security around this data. You connect 5G with blockchain, if that tell you something. Blockchain is actually having computers working in parallel. So that means that if you have any attack, let's say, on your data, it doesn't matter because this computer can be disconnected immediately and the data is already replicated in the other computer chains. So that means what I'm trying to say is that automatically when you adopt 5G and AI, you're automatically adopting more secure environment rather than what you have now with the firewall, etc. So therefore, it's actually not only an enabler to have faster network, but it's an enabler to be more secure. So if I were in your shoes, I wouldn't worry about that anymore because it's coming as a package anyway with the connectivity in the future term.
I think security by design is part of the 3GPP 5G standards. I think there's a security element to the Worcester project, in fact,
absolutely.
that kind of security by design piece. And it's something that is generally part of the, there's a work stream on that as part of the DCMS 5G Testbeds and Trials program as well.
So let's focus a little bit more on the Worcestershire 5G testbed. Can you just say again what the goals of that program are and the steps that you're taking to get there?
So there are lots of partners into this project, and so we'll not say something wrong. I have it all in paper here. And I have to say, first of all, is led from the lab, and we're very thankful that the lab is supporting that and leading the project. The main aim of the testbed is actually to explore ways to increase productivity by using robotics, big data analytics, and augmented reality with 5G. They will test different use cases. And I have to say, for Nebosh, we are focusing on robotics and about the data analysis and also communication between the network and also the security gates, and also allowing, for example, the IoT gateway. The IoT gateway means is that you have old machinery and you have new machineries. And usually, at the moment, currently, you will have different platforms. So you will struggle, if you like, to shift information from A to B. But we're trying to see, okay, with the 5G, actually, that will have an open source between these machineries. So actually, the flow between the old and new, it's given, if you like. So that is one of the elements, how you could actually prove the implementation and as well as the speediness of the IoT gateway. And the other area as well, but it's not actually in our project, is the farming with drone. I think this is another probably testbed which is related probably to that.
One of the other partners in the Worcester manufacturing project is a company that sells machine tools, and they're very, very interested in this notion of predictive maintenance. So they supply a machine to a customer who's bought their machine, but they need to provide the ongoing maintenance of that machine as well. And they want to provide that through 5G, through monitoring, through sensing, because if the machine breaks down, there's huge cost implications for their customer. And at the moment, it's a very tricky process, and they have to go through the company's IT department. So if what they're looking to be able to do is to self-deploy 5G networks to perform that constant monitoring, preventive maintenance as part of their service wrap for their customers.
And what is it about 5G that makes it the ideal solution for these use cases? What makes it so much better than 4G or other communication systems they've got in today?
I have also, yeah, exactly. I mentioned a really very important point in that perspective is at the moment, for example, when you have a manufacturing line, you want the manufacturing line to be 100% used and leveraged. That means that you need to have a certain quantity of volume to actually, if you like, have the usability of the machinery what you have. Now, in a 5G perspective, is because everything is connected, and actually the processes between changing the, I will say, for example, if you have product A and B and C, and usually you have more than 100 products, an average of these manufacturing sites, if you have a human interaction, it will take you at least 5 minutes to change. In 5G perspective, that all will happen already automatically. That means actually the program will change, and you immediately you could switch between low volume, high volume of products, and you could be more efficient. So what I'm trying to say is that 5G is important because the speediness and as well as the data analysis between the machines and the communication will allow you actually to make more changes in the product portfolio within one day. And that is really important.
I think a lot of it is about that data analytics and being able through edge computing and the way that 5G networks are designed slightly differently to be able to process that data on site and sort of instantly, as well as the high bandwidth and so on. So all of those elements of 5G really come together in a manufacturing environment.
Perfect. So we're talking a little bit about manufacturing. You've mentioned agriculture. Are there any other areas that the government is looking at for 5G in particular?
Well, all of the potential applications, everything from media to fintech, there are, agri-tech and so on. There's multiple applications. So we're looking to, stimulate as many of those as we can. But really concentrating on those where the business case is less clear, or the commercial arrangements are less clear. I mean, you mentioned smart cities. Smart cities is one of those difficult nuts to crack in terms of, who buys what from whom. Same with IoT. We all know technically it can be done, but who's providing what service to who and who's paying for it, who's funding it. So those are some of the things that we're trying to, if we can draw out the demand, then we can understand where the financing for the deployments is going to come from.
I think one definitely area where we are very active into this is driverless cars and automation. The government really was and still very supportive with CAF program. They supported the implementation of driverless cars. They supported also the development for the technologies, but as well as the 5G is an element of driverless car, which we cannot undermine. So therefore, in my opinion, and I compliment to the government, that it's definitely from the strategy perspective makes absolutely sense. They started, for example, in case of driverless car, to empower the manufacturer to be in the UK and to have the possibility to test the technology. And now they are enabling the technology to flourish through actually having the best environment with 5G network. So this is also definitely one area. We are very active in it, and we think it will have, in a future term, a potential for high, if you like, quality manufacturing in the UK.
Excellent, excellent. So one question that's come in online is, what is the most compelling 5G in manufacturing use case that you've heard of to date?
I think it's this productivity element. As you say, you need to, so you can't have machines, every time a machine goes down, that's losing productivity. I think, from the government's perspective, it's all about productivity. boosting productivity. So I think Mark Stansfeld from the LEP has a statistic that if you can, boost productivity by 1% or so. I think that's really the key, just maximising efficiency of manufacturing processes, which 5G can enable.
I mean, I have to say, imagine your life for 20 years ago without mobile. Would you live without mobile? I mean, you wouldn't. At the moment, we in the manufacturing side, we don't have this connectivity, and we are struggling from error to error to error, and actually also from the handover from one machinery to another's, and relying a lot on things which actually affect our productivity but profitability. So therefore, when you have everything connected, and actually you are focusing not anymore on this, I would say, little things, you're focusing more in improving, if you like, your product, in developing better, more robust products. And that is the beauty in the whole manufacturing, because you are not bounded anymore. For example, another thing which I would like to bang on it again, in having a capital to start actually manufacturing, you have more possibilities now, even if you don't have the budget, to start something new, and also to pay per use. And this is really, my opinion, is very powerful.
That's good. So, in terms of taking 5G for manufacturing from the academic work that you mentioned earlier, and from the Testbeds and Trials programs that are going on now, and deploying it nationally, what are the next steps, do you think?
Well, ultimately, it will be commercial deployment, and so we want to see those providers and potential providers flourish through and be stimulated by the program. So I think that there's an important angle around access to spectrum, which the government is sort of looking at alongside this, so we just hope that the program will accelerate that commercial deployment.
I think it's really important at this stage. First of all, we are in the early start, so it is important to create, and you did that. The community is really created for 5G. So I would really encourage everyone online to engage with this community. I think exchange of information is really very important. And exchange of information in a way with the testbeds, what we have at the moment, to learn what can be done better in the future term, but as well as how we can, from each other, gain experience to be a better manufacturer, if you like. The other thing is I will encourage also investors, especially overseas investors. We need more people to come in and actually, if you like, open up the market. We have here in the UK, and Bosch one of them, we encourage to improve our manufacturing lines, to learn more about factories, to engage with Industry 4.0, which is in the heart of 5G, but we think is more to come, and with the very engaged government, we do encourage you to come and engage and invest in the UK.
And I'm going to hop on that with a little plug for UK 5G, which is a fantastic platform for engaging with the 5G community across multiple sectors. So if you are interested in finding out more about 5G, go on to uk5g.org, where you can find information about all of these testbeds and trials, and a number of organisations who are working in this area. Good plug. So within the manufacturing sector, there's a lot of talk about Industry 4.0. How does 5G relate to that?
So Industry 4.0, if you like, is it is the factory of the future. The term maybe is misused when you see Industry 4.0, but it's actually just related about the whole discussion. What we talked about today is about making things connected and flawless, and using actually, if you like, better, effective, shorter processes in the future. And also Industry 4.0 relates on the robotics technology and make it them more, if you like, efficient, smaller, and also capable for more robustness in case of manufacturing. I can go on and on and on. IoT is, of course, a part of the Industry 4.0. And the whole Internet of Things connected to the term of Industry 4.0. Hints of the time, if you are interested, please do get in touch, because we have seminars from Bosch perspective, but as well as we do have brochures, and this is not selling pitch, but just an information about Industry 4.0, because it's not only manufacturing, it really goes across the industry sectors as well.
I've got a little question about skills, and essentially it's what skills will be needed both on the manufacturing side and beyond to deploy 5G in various factories.
On the manufacturing side, I think skills is an important part of the 5G conversation generally, and it's something that government's very conscious of. We are looking at promoting development in skills in this area, so I completely agree that it's an important issue. But I think what we're hoping with 5G is that it will, to some extent, put the users, put the networks more make the users more empowered, put it that way. But even if that's through sort of third-party intermediaries and so on.
So no changes in skills that are drastic, just an evolution of current work that's enabled by a new network. Yeah.
I mean, we have the skills is a chronic, I wouldn't say problem, but challenge. And when we talk about manufacturing, we touch on engineering indirectly. And engineering, why? Because you will have, with 5G and the whole connectivity things, you will need new skills. You will need people who are hybrid between IT knowledge and between the hardware, traditional engineering. And we do think that in future terms, there will be, we have a challenge, we will have an opportunity to actually, if you like, open up different skills in our universities, but as well as allow the people who we have now to upskill and give them a chance to improve their positions moving forward. I always hear, for example, when we talk about 5G and connectivity, people are afraid making redundant, but it's not. It's opening up different ways of engaging with the industry and different ways of working. And there where we need to see how we can, upskill our people, but as well as giving them the opportunity actually to even be more better and productive in what they're doing.
One of the use cases that I've really enjoyed reading about in the Worcestershire 5G Consortium is the use of augmented reality for training and for fixing machines. Can you talk a little bit more about that use case?
Absolutely. Augmented reality, or the virtual reality or 3D dimension, is really important in two aspects. The one aspect is you can trial things without having any, I would say, physical damage. So you could actually see the environment, trial it, learn. You can do lots of errors, but it's all in a safe environment. So it's very good for training. And it's not only in the manufacturing, by the way. It came originally from surgery, from healthcare. And we see how important for reducing errors. And the error used to be in the operational level in healthcare more than 40%. And through introducing augmented reality, they reduce it less than 10%. So in the manufacturing side, and that will help, again, your question about skills, how you could use augmented reality actually to upskill your people in a safer environment and having even less cost involved in it. So the beauty in it, less cost, safe environment, and actually the chance to the people to trial things in more sufficient way.
And it can also be used in real world environments.
Exactly.
So if you've got an engineer going to an actual problem, if they've got a kind of the AR spectacles on, they know what they're looking for. That the technology is telling them, which button to press and so on. See how technical I am.
Well done.
So I think we've got time for one final question, and it's the last one on the chat. Will government move to assist service providers to access 5G spectrum bands, e.g. through leasing options?
Potentially. The Future Telecoms Infrastructure Review suggested that Ofcom look at various aspects of spectrum authorization. There are various ways in which spectrum can be auctioned in addition to the traditional licensing methods. So there's dynamic spectrum access, there's spectrum leasing, commercial wholesaling, and light licensing. So we're very much looking at all of these approaches and a variety of approaches at the moment in parallel with this work.
So that work is ongoing. And then we might have time just to fit in one more. So, final one, with regard to manufacturing, will the government be involved in helping industry to adopt the new telecoms infrastructure within plants, for example, aiding skills development or helping with any finance?
Well, certainly through this programme, additional funding is potentially made available. So yes, I mean we're in the programme. I'm not quite sure whether the question is referring to wider than the programme, but in this project we're very much open to ideas as to what are the necessary elements of a project to make it all work. So we're very happy to hear your thoughts on what's required.
Perfect. And so after this, I believe we're sending round a survey where we would really appreciate hearing, again, your thoughts, your comments, your opinions on 5G in manufacturing and on the challenges and what we could do to help. Thank you very much to Louise, to Eman, and to Wenbing for joining us online. Thank you to everyone who's been part of this today. I want to say thank you very much. And please be sure to visit uk5g.org to find out more about what's happening in 5G in manufacturing. Thank you.